Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1 Episode 14, WAR-MANTLE, has finally been released, and with it we were given a glimpse into the opening stages of the Imperial plan to eliminate most clone troopers and replace them with natural-born stormtroopers. The episode has some awesome connections to the other Star Wars TV shows, and even the games with a cameo from someone absolutely massive. So let's break down everything that went down in the episode, and how it will affect the series going into the final 2 episodes of the show. So make sure you subscribe for more awesome Star Wars lore content. So the episode begins with a rogue clone trooper sprinting through the dark forests of Daro, being eagerly chased down by Imperial clone troopers from all directions. He is eventually stunned to the ground and caught by his fellow brothers, before they take him to a hidden Imperial facility carved into the face of a mountain. Back on the Bad Batch's ship, they get a transmission from the man himself, Captain Rex, who is in dire need of help. Rex just received a distress signal from the rogue clone trooper we saw earlier, but unfortunately he's a bit tied up right now, so he asks the Bad Batch to lend him a hand. Rex can't go into any further detail as he's in a pretty dicey situation himself, and instead patches through the signal to the Bad Batch. As Tech pulls up the location on the signal, he quickly realizes that it is coming from a clone trooper called CC-5576, which is the code number of Commando Gregor, who we all know from his heroic appearances in the Clone Wars series, as well as in Star Wars Rebels, where he has met up with Rex and Wolf to live on a walker on the barren world of Selos. Gregor's signal is coming from the planet Daro in the Outer Rim, which causes Tech to protest and stress that they're right in the middle of a job for Sid, so they really shouldn't be taking another mission. Thankfully, however, the group eventually decide that they will try to rescue the stranded Gregor, regardless of the risk. Following this, we return to Camino, where Crosshair is preparing every viable clone trooper for a massive operation, and the clone cadets are being prepared to be moved out of the facilities. We of course saw clone cadets appear many times throughout the Clone Wars series, including when Boba tried to blend in with them in an attempt to assassinate Mace Windu. Awesomely, we also get a look at some Imperial Venators stationed above Camino, guarding the Imperial presence there. Moving to the Prime Minister's chambers, we find out that the Kaminoan leadership are now about to flee Camino for their own safety, knowing that the Empire is about to threaten their very existence. In Legends, something very similar happened when the Kaminoans tried to flee Camino during the Clone Uprising, and let's just say it didn't end too well for them that time. Back with the Batch, the crew arrive on Daro, and they begin tracing the signal put out by Gregor, with Omega almost immediately finding the beacon he placed down. They quickly become concerned when they realize that there is no reg near the beacon, and Hunter begins to use his tracking skill to find out more. Hunter then sends Omega and Wrecker back to the ship, while the rest continue moving forward towards a massive mountain. They know that there must be something inside the walls of these mountains, but have absolutely no idea just yet. As a result, the group begins scaling up the mountain face, arriving at a terrifyingly large Imperial facility, recessed right into the mountain. Upon further inspection through their macro binoculars, the Batch see that there are a group of clone commandos wearing Catan-class commando armor, leading troopers who seem to have moved sharply away from Phase 2 clone armor into a mix of clone and stormtrooper armor. This armor is actually taken directly from the Ralph McQuarrie concept art, which also inspired the helmets at the Imperial Academy on Lothal from Star Wars Rebels. It's always awesome to see Ralph McQuarrie's art make it into the show, and I think this is the perfect place to put it, right on the transition between the clone troopers and the stormtroopers. This is definitely the beginning of the transition into stormtrooper armor, and the phasing out of the highly regarded Phase 2 clone armor. After seeing this, Hunter and Tech are just about ready to pack up and leave, but Echo pleads with them to help out this stranded clone, because the Bad Batch did the same for him back on Skako Minor. Of course, this is referring to the daring rescue of Echo from the Separatists back in the Clone Wars Season 7. It's awesome to see Echo get even the slightest bit of character development here, since he really hasn't been given too much this season, apart from a few lines. Following this, Echo hacks into a nearby Imperial computer system with his cybernetic arm, and reports that the facility seems to be holding 50 clone commandos, who are leading over 1,000 TK units, something which he and the others haven't heard of yet. TK troopers are obviously the designation which are used for the Stormtrooper Corps of the Imperial Army. So this is the first documented use of TK which the Bad Batch have ever heard. After this, the Batch arrives at Gregor's cell, before asking him if he is in fact CC-5576, to which he tells them that he is, but they should call him Gregor. After this comes the hard part, getting Gregor safely out of the prison complex, with all of these new units patrolling alongside the clone commandos. As the Bad Batch are escaping, they ask Gregor what he was doing post Order 66, and we learn that he was serving as an army instructor before he went rogue. While this is happening, Tech attempts to trigger Clone Code 16, which of course no longer works after the Imperial transition, meaning he just triggered a security alert around the entire facility. During the escape, the group take down countless of the new troopers, after which they discover that only the commandos are still clones of Jango Fett. The replacement of the clone troopers as part of Operation WAR-MANTLE is now well underway. Many fighters from all across the galaxy have pledged loyalty to the Empire and joined this new version of the Imperial Army already. While in the middle of the chase, the group come across a distinctively painted yellow clone commando, who actually happens to be RC-1262, also known as SCORCH. SCORCH was the demolitions expert of the infamous Delta Squad, who you'll probably remember from the Republic Commando game, as well as their very brief appearance in the Clone Wars Season 3 episode, Witches of the Mist. I have to say it's really awesome to see them brought onto the screen once again, since they really only got 30 seconds of screen time in the Clone Wars, and the game is unfortunately no longer canon, although it's still incredible, so you should definitely still play it. In the Legends timeline, SCORCH and all of the other clone commandos were reconvened on Coruscant at an audience with Darth Vader 3 weeks after the creation of the Empire, where Vader reorganized them all into the Imperial Commando Special Unit, which was an elite unit of the 501st. Something similar could be going on here, but it looks like only about 50 of the most highly skilled and elite clone commandos are present. As the group get to safety and can have a small rest, they inspect Gregor's blaster wounds, but he tells them he'll be fine since he was blown up once before and survived that. This is a reference to his arc from the Clone Wars series, where he both survived a crash at the Battle of Sarish, giving him amnesia, as well as a heroic stand against the battle droids stationed on the planet Abathar. Moving down the corridors with their escape, Gregor mentions that he was taken to this remote facility in the Outer Rim, along with the rest of the clone commandos for some mysterious purpose. Gregor, however, had no interest in serving the Empire any longer, so he instead chose to defect, which the Empire doesn't treat too kindly. Also throughout the corridors, you can hear the distinctive radio chatter from the Republic Commando games, which is of course connected to the massive commandos stationed there. After this, Omega and Wrecker eventually bring in the ship to complete the rescue, with all of the Bad Batch doing their best to outmaneuver the Imperial ships, while Hunter unfortunately falls out of the ship and somehow survives a ridiculously high fall on the mountain below. And I've just got to say that the TK units absolutely unloaded on their own man, sending him flying down the cliff for no reason. So rip to that brave clone commander who was killed by his own men. He tries his best to pull his knife out and slow the fall, but unfortunately he's left in a prime position to be captured by the advancing Imperial forces on the surface. Back on Kamino, Nala Se is caught attempting to gather forces to flee Kamino before their impending doom, but unfortunately the elite troopers are quick to get to her. When confronted about this, Lama Su pretends to not know about it and offers to punish Nala Se personally to spare her the Imperial treatment, but Rampart doesn't bother with this, instead telling the Prime Minister that he only has use for a scientist and not a politician, before sending the elite troopers in to execute him on the spot. But since this is Star Wars and we didn't see the death, there's a slight possibility that he's still alive. Now moving on to the pretty mysterious and cryptic ending, we head straight back to the ominous Imperial base on Daro, where Hunter is sitting alone in his cell, before Crosshair arrives on the scene to greet him. Hunter is not surprised at all to see his old friend show up at the cell, and Crosshair immediately takes his helmet off to face him man to man. Crosshair tells his old batch member that he was hoping for the whole squad, but Hunter will have to do. This almost implies that the Imperials will either try to chip Hunter again, or brainwash him into serving the Empire as their own version of the Bad Batch, which Rampart hinted at on Ryloth. He mentioned that it was a pity the Bad Batch are serving against him and not for him, clearly indicating that he would like his own version of them. If the Clone Rebellion does end up taking place in this season, with the little time we have left, I could see Hunter being chipped and fighting against his own batchmates before breaking free again. But we'll just have to wait and see for that. So that is my full breakdown of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1 Episode 14, War-Mantle, which has finally brought us back to the plotline which started the show, which will eventually show us the replacement of most of the clone troopers with stormtroopers. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.